So, welcome to February. Welcome to Black History Month. Welcome to Deborah Mitchell and Donna McKenzie and other members of Natick for Black Lives Matter. And everything I've mentioned, I think, is on the docket for discussion this morning. So I know Donna's going to talk to us about the Voting Rights Act. I know Deborah's got news about what Natick for Black Lives Matters is up to. I know she's just written a new book, which she's showing. So I think it looks like pretty much all of our regulars are on. I'm inclined to skip our introductions if that's okay with folks. Although anybody that is new to the group, please feel free to introduce yourselves. And
Doug, you have Bishop Kelley
yeah.
from the Black Lives Matters in the Boston diocese.
Yeah, welcome, Bishop. You've shared with us 2 or 3 times now in the past, and we're always happy to have you join us. So let me turn it over to both Deborah and Donna, and whatever order you guys would like to go through your topics is great with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm speaking as actually a favor to Deb. Not that this isn't important to me, but it would be much more poignant, I think, with a Black woman leading a discussion on the Voting Rights Act. Although we white people have so much to do. We have so much to do. And this is a really powerful and poignant talk to begin the celebration of Black History Month with. So I'm not sure if it was your idea to do this or Deb's idea, but kudos for the choice. It was yours, Deb?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a powerful topic to begin with. And I mostly want to facilitate a discussion because I think this is something that we should engage in and talk to and about. And I just want to begin with kind of an intro to the Voting Rights Act and what it's about. And I think we all know that the right to vote is enshrined in the Constitution. Especially specifically in the first article of the Constitution. And does anyone know in the Constitution proper who's allowed to vote?
White men.
I think it was white
Landowners.
property.
Yes. Mr. Cappell is exactly right. It was white men who own property, but it never even says that in the Constitution. It just assumes it. The assumption is that the one who has the power of the vote, the voice through the vote, is a white male. When did Black men get the right to vote? Anyone know off the top of their head?
In the 60s, civil rights movement, Martin?
So
No?
maybe practically, but according to the Constitution, it was earlier. Was it a constitutional amendment in the post-civil rights?
Post-Civil War era.
Post-Civil War.
Post-Civil War.
Exactly right. Black men got the vote in 1870. 1870. So it was a long time ago, but the fact that Black men were given the right to vote didn't mean that they got to vote, right? I mean, there were a lot of bloodshed. And there was the rise of the Ku Klux Klan during this period, specifically to shut off the power of Black. It was a fear of the Black voice and the Black people voting. And they were also what the first article in the Constitution does is it relegates authority for federal elections to the states. So the states get to decide the rules for what's going to happen with elections. And you see over time, too, that there were all of these kind of like, I don't know, heinous practices. There were literacy tests that you had to pass a certain literacy test in order to vote. There were also poll taxes. And I know my immigrant family in Boston was subjected to a poll tax, and it wasn't an insignificant amount, but still, when you think about it, paying a poll tax to vote you had to be committed when you were hardly finding money for food. And there was another amendment to the Constitution, and I think it was only like in about, I can tell you exactly, I think it was 1964 that the poll tax was eradicated. I mean, it was relatively late. It's surprising, it's relatively late that that poll tax was changed. And it was the exact year,
It was the Supreme Court.
1964.
Correct? Oh.
1964, can you imagine? Until 1964, states, municipalities were allowed to charge people to vote. And as you can see, that would also eliminate the numbers of people who could vote, because some people simply couldn't afford a poll tax when they couldn't even afford food, right? So their voice was lost. There actually are 4 amendments that were made to the Constitution to clarify voting rights. And the first one was the amendment in 1870, giving Black men the right to vote. And that was the 15th Amendment. Again, that didn't mean they could vote. There were all kinds of obstacles put up in the way. The 19th Amendment, and the 19th Amendment is what? Anyone know off the top of their head? Women's right?
Women.
Women get the right to vote. And that was like no small feat. And
What year was that?
1920. 1920. And then that was the 19th. The 24th Amendment eliminated the poll taxes in 1964. And finally, the 26th Amendment. How's your test of constitutional amendments on voting? Anyone remember what the 26th Amendment was?
Oh, the age?
Age.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, Martin Kessel could have done this presentation.
We can never,
What's that?
we have to wait till we're 21.
Yes, it was always, the voting age was always 21. And that amendment in 1971 lowered the voting age to 18. And does anyone remember what the rationale was for that? I mean, we're just kind of
Old enough
looking
to
together.
die in Vietnam, you're old enough to vote.
Yes, that's exactly
I
right.
remember that, yeah.
If we can send you to Vietnam to get killed, we ought to allow you to vote, to have input into the decisions that are made about wars, et cetera. And there were some civil rights legislation that was passed in terms of voting, but the most significant piece of legislation was the Voting Rights Act in 1965. And the Voting Rights Act, sadly, has been gutted. There was a significant piece of the Voting Rights Act that said that the federal government could regulate practices and policies in certain states that met a parameter for discriminatory practices. Specifically, like Alabama was one of those states. I think Mississippi was one of those states. I think there were like 4, but there were also counties, because when you do, there's a lot of power in creating the districts for voting and such like that too. You can divide districts so that you're taking away from a voting block, whether it be Black people or immigrants. So there were some civil rights, but there were, again, some civil rights things that were added before. And when you think about this is another thing. It wasn't until the 80s that laws were added to make polls accessible to elderly people. It really wasn't until the 1980s. I mean, if you couldn't walk in, if you couldn't see, I mean, all of those accommodations came in the 1980s. So we're still growing all of this, but in some ways, with this topic of the Voting Rights Act, we're stepping back. And let me explain why. The Voting Rights Act was such a powerful moment of civil rights in our country, and so hopeful. And anyone remember what president signed it into law?
It was Johnson, this right after he signed the original Civil Rights Act. A year later, he was able to sign the voting rights.
Yes, exactly. It was President Johnson and there were, of course, Dr. Martin Luther King was in the room when that bill was signed and had lobbied extensively, as had many Black leaders lobbied extensively to make the system, to not disenfranchise Black people, to let their voices be heard. So this was a really significant, pardon?
Can I say something before?
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
and that was through a lot of protests, a lot of bloodshed. Bishop, I remember you're probably a part of that era in the civil rights era. I'm sorry to call you out, but it wasn't no small. I watched the Coretta Scott Rose Garden, which I'm going to give you the link to. But her house was bombed. There was meetings. Okay, I just want to say that.
No, Deb, I think that's really important. All of this came with
Very rough.
bloodshed and fighting, and people don't want people to vote for various, I mean, voting is power, and people have always historically, especially tried to stifle the Black vote. And in 2013, the promise of the Voting Rights Act was really gutted by the Supreme Court. And it was led by Chief Justice John Roberts, who now I think regrets having done what he did. But what it did was it removed a section of that act that allowed there to be federal oversight in areas of the country that were incredibly discriminatory. So there was no check and balance that I think increasingly with this Supreme Court, there's a feeling that things could be race neutral, that we've reached a point maybe where things can be race neutral. And there are other pieces, and I'm not a constitutional scholar, I'm not a lawyer, but there are other pieces of that act that they expect to fall by the wayside too. But the major part of that, which was the check and balance on districts and in specific states, is gone. That's no longer constitutional. So that's a very, very unfortunate turn of events.
So Donna, what are you saying? What did they do? And it was no longer constitutional to do what?
It's no longer constitutional to have federal oversight in counties or in states that have proven that they discriminate against Black voters.
Okay.
So that, I mean, that's huge, because I think we would be naive to think that that discrimination doesn't happen. And I think we would also be naive to think that discrimination doesn't happen here in Massachusetts, that we're somehow immune from this. There are also many states require voter identification when you go to vote. Massachusetts does not. But let's think together for a minute, what are the downsides of requiring, some kind of some actually require a picture with federal identification to vote. What do you see as the downside of that requirement?
It's harder for some Black people to get ID. And, because for a variety of reasons, they get tickets more at a higher rate, and you can't pay your ticket. You can't renew your license. If your license is expired, you can't register to vote. Right?
Correct. That's
You
right.
never had a car if you live in the city and just take mass transportation, and you don't have a license.
And you don't what? You don't worry about it so much?
No, I was saying maybe you don't have a car in the first place. You were talking about if you lost your license, but if you live in an urban area and can take mass transportation to where you go and don't have a place to park, you might not have a car, you might not have a license in the first place.
Right, but there are, and Bishop, I wanted you to speak to this. Bishop, are you listening? I want you to speak to this because if you don't have a license, you can get a mass ID. And a lot of people are required to get those, right, Bishop?
Yeah.
Bishop,
Correct.
so what are some of the downfalls of getting a mass ID
Money,
if you're Black? Bishop,
The downfall for getting the downfall for getting a mass ID. Well, I mean that can be used as, of course, a legitimate identification, but also it you also need a driver's license too to reinforce that. In most instances, you need two forms of ID. So yeah, a mass ID can supersede a driver's license, and that could be discrimination. But I wanted to point out something else. By the way, Donna, you did an excellent job in outlining the legislation around voting rights. A couple of things I wanted to point out, though, later on, maybe, but redistricting is also another thing that prohibits folks from drawing geographical lines and redlining and those kinds of things eliminate the right to vote. So anyway, I appreciate
that's a really good point. And as long as we still have, for instance, the Electoral College, it's an attempt to, redistricting is often an attempt to dissolve voting blocks. And then it really can decimate the power of the Black community, and it can decimate the power of immigrant groups. And I think another issue with the ID issue, although there's been some effort to fix that, is people who suffer from homelessness. I mean, now I think there's a system in process where they can have an address, because you need an address also to have this identification. But I've worked at the polls in Natick for many years, and I always have people coming in wanting to show their IDs to me and being very belligerent about it, saying that Massachusetts needs to require these IDs because there's voter fraud. And they're sure there are people who are voting who should not be voting. And I'm not allowed to look at those IDs because we don't have an ID law in Massachusetts. And again, my concern is that those laws are used to disenfranchise people, and there's very little evidence of fraud in elections, especially like in Natick, like in speaking to the town clerk, and it's kind of an alarmist. I mean, Martin has also worked at the polls. Do you have thoughts about that?
Yeah, it seems to be a non-issue because we'd have a hunch of what was going on if something was going on, and there's been nobody has alleged anything. No, there's no sense of anything.
But I'm surprised that, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to add also zip codes also kind of restrict and limit the right to vote as well. I do have a history, as Deborah alluded to. I was at the early age of 8, I was part of the Martin Luther King launching of the civil rights movement. I think I shared that at one of my speeches, but go ahead. This is really very.
You did share it before. Can you share it again? Okay.
Well, we'll let this go on right now. I'm just.
Can you mute yourself, Bishop? Okay.
Okay, well, I just, there's no way, I mean, we can't also be naive that in Massachusetts we're immune from this, because we also do redistricting. There's also been questions about how that redistricting has been done. There's also been questions about, I think that we have to say, and I say this as a white person, I've experienced disenfranchisement, but I can't imagine what it is like to be Black in this day and age and in this community, and with the divisiveness now of this election and the polls and the heartache, having the situation where over 27,000 people have been killed in Gaza. And some of the Black church leaders are saying that they can't support Biden for that. And then on the other hand, others supporting Biden and the historical support of the Jewish community for the Black community, and the necessity to also have the back of the Jewish community. It's just, these are very divisive, and I really am worried about this election, and I'm worried about people being disenfranchised. And I think it's really important to reflect on the Voters' Right Act and the ways in which it's been decimated, and to think about the ways that we can help have people have voices who have been silenced. I just think that's really critical at this point. Like, how can we help people have a voice? Because that's what voting is. Voting is a voice. And we've tried many ugly ways throughout history. And again, people have died trying to vote. And our elections, we have like 8% turnout for like a town election in Natick, 8%. And it's higher for like a primary election, but all bets are off for this primary election because there's no surprise in the candidates, right?
Yeah, presidential primary, even, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, there's no.
So I know
Yeah.
Pat has his hand up. I want to let him get his question in or comment.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Donna, Deborah, and Bishop. I find this very fascinating, the whole discussion of voting rights and access. I was just curious, as far as Natick, because Martin, maybe you and Donna know, does the select board or school committee or anybody that can send out the MWRTA to people so they can get to the polls? People who can't drive and that kind of, is there any kind of action like that, helping people get to the polls?
It used to be the case that with state and national elections that there were people in the community who offered rides to the polls. And once upon a time, when we had like the League of Women's Voters, which has now been officially disbanded, the Natick chapter, that was a group that offered that kind of a service. But I mean, accessibility to the polls is really important. I mean, you can't vote if you can't get there. And also, I think getting people the information that they need to have to know that, well, you can vote absentee. And how do I apply for an absentee ballot? Or how do I do early voting if that's an option? So it's really getting the word out about this is so important. It's a great question. It's a really important question. It's something that we need to do better with.
Hey,
So
Donna,
there isn't a ride system from, say, Cedar Gardens or some place like that. It's just if that person wants to, they call MWRTA and get their own ride. Is that the way it works, kind of?
Yes, I mean, rides are available that way, but it certainly helps when you're part of a population that kind of feels his experience being disenfranchised. And I think elderly people feel that way too, especially Black elderly people. So there's something about something that's maybe like organized. I mean, you know that about your great work for Keep Natick Beautiful. It makes a difference to work as a team, to get people together as a team. Like that makes a difference when people are feeling discouraged.
Well, my last question would be something like, FCC and some of the churches that we have in Natick, CSSC, they're very, very progressive. And I was wondering if they have ever organized transportation to the polls or things like that.
that's a really good question.
Good question.
I know that our church, FCC, is actually looking at things that we can do even for this Springtown election to get out the vote. And it's something, an idea that we can bring to them.
Okay, so don't worry about it.
I'm sorry, guys.
That's
Yep.
that's a good.
Paul, you got your hand up. Did you want to weigh in?
Yes, Patrick, I've been a long time volunteer on election days in the community, and I've done it through different organizations. My Catholic organization, St. Patrick's, has organized for Cedar Gardens, Coolidge Gardens, Mill Street, organized a crew of people to pick up the seniors that don't drive at those locations. And I've been part of that over the years. But now's a good time to start it, Patrick. I will put the bug in Pastor Chip's ear and let him know that we should get started on that right away. Organize a team. I get veterans on the team and so forth, but I'll bring it up to Chips this week. I got to talk to the pastor and on other issues. So when I speak to him this week, I'll remind him to get hot and heavy on that.
I think that's a great idea, and I think like kind of leveraging the power of synagogues and churches to help get people out to vote, because there probably are people that are shy about saying, well, I'd like to vote, I didn't sign up for early voting, and some people like to actually just go to the polls. I mean, my parents like to vote by going to the polls. They would not have done an absentee ballot. So I mean, I think that's important. And you speaking reminded me also of the military and how to empower the military in terms of voting. And really, it was only, I think, only until about 2009, it took us to improve the processes for counting votes of the military who were stationed overseas. And it always, I mean, it's always probably tough for the military, right? Because they'll always say, oh, we're still counting the military ballots. We're still counting the military ballots. And you always feel like they're being counted after the election's been decided. So
it's also a hard process. Just, I know when our son was stationed overseas, just to get the absentee ballot, we had to get it and ship it to him. And, it's not the easiest process.
Okay, I'm gonna have to interrupt. I'm gonna have to get back to the Voters' Rights Act. And Donna, thank you for your presentation. But one of the main things, and this is good because Natick, we see the differences in the Black community. I've lived in the Black community and in a white community now here in Natick. But I'm from the Black community, as is Bishop, but Bishop seems to be preoccupied today. So anyway, I'm learning a lot about the Natick process and how that interacts. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I think that we should have part 2 on this, Doug and Sarah, part 2 in a couple of months on the Voters' Rights Act.
Yeah, well, one question I wanted to ask.
But I want to finish. I want to finish what I was going to say. Do you mind?
Go right ahead.
No, go ahead, Doug. Go ahead. You go, because I'm trying
Well, it was really on the Voting Rights Act. I wanted to ask a follow-up question of Donna. Donna, you mentioned 2013 that Justice Roberts kind of gutted things, and presumably that was a case that got elevated to the Supreme Court and allowed the gutting to occur. And I know, since then there's been just waves of state cases, destroying more voting rights at the state level. Are there any cases that are pending or anything that are attempting to restore rights, either at the state or the federal level?
Before Donna answers that question, there's a reason why I brought this whole thing up, because I'm talking about 2023, 2024, where 8 districts have gutted the Voting Rights Act. And Donna, you might have addressed this, but it might have went over my head. But now you cannot go in 8 districts to the federal government if you're a community or a civil rights organization and say these rights have been violated by these citizens. Don, you might have addressed this. Now they can't do that. Only the federal government can do that.
What was gutted, you're right.
Yeah, well, let's let Donna respond to that, Deborah.
Okay, I'm gonna be quiet now. I just had to
get
no, it's a good question. I just want to give people a chance to respond.
Those were the ramifications of the act being gutted in 2013, that the federal oversight was deemed unconstitutional. So it couldn't be the case that people could go to the Department of Justice, to the feds and say, these rights are being violated in this county. So there's really, it's not good. There are not protections. And there was legislation in the pipeline, the John Lewis voting, there was John Lewis voting bill. That was, the dream of that was to restore some of this and to try and restore and institute processes that it would ensure that every person's vote counted. It's not gone anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. There are two other bills that also, and I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head, I apologize, but they have not gone anywhere. So there is nothing currently in the pipeline to amend the processes that have been gutted for the Voting Rights Act, which is.
Thank you.
And it's a curious thing. I mean, I read one law journal and there's also contradictory strategies on how they're interpreting this. There's a law journal from Duke, and when it comes to religious rights and religious freedoms, that's been interpreted very strictly with a very strict adherence to the law. But on the other hand, when it comes to Black voting and that has been, there are contradictory methodologies that seem also blatantly unfair when you're talking about civil rights kind of topics, if you understand what I'm saying. So Supreme Court justices matter, who gets to appoint them matter. And can this be fixed? I think the only remedy for the way this act has been gutted and the way I fear it will continue to be, I mean, there's a case up in front of the Supreme Court now, and I don't remember all the details, but this would actually be the nail in the coffin, I think, if they, gutted this act. So the only really thing, it would require a new piece of legislation probably to restore and create new voting rights acts. So we're kind of left, I mean, this was so depressing to look at all of this. And again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a person who is filled with more and more outrage as I read about this and its impact. And even on the voting in the primaries in South Carolina, there were Black groups that felt they had been disenfranchised because of the way the districts had been drawn. So it's bad. It's bad, and we need all of the power in us to keep working against this. And no action's too small. Like working to drive people to the polls so that their vote counts is really important. And also, there's a great sort of ennui in people that I think younger people think it doesn't even matter if they vote. Their vote doesn't matter, especially in this presidential election. I listened to somebody yesterday say, well, Biden's got dementia and, Trump is crazy and what's the choice? So there's I don't know what the voter turnout is going to be like for this. But somehow we have to reclaim the importance of voting and the power of the vote. And we have to make it easier for disenfranchised communities. We have to, our Black people are not in good shape. I have to say that.
Listen, Donna, when you say our Black people, that kind of sounds like when Donald Trump said, my African American. But
yeah,
that's okay. We know that the racism is steeped in the American culture. And I'm not encouraging, I'm not calling you racist at all, but it's steeped. Now, my sister is going to be writing a book, I'm going to send this out to you guys. Everybody, I want you to get the book. It's called White Fear. This is our new book club. I'm going to interrupt because I want to share some of the things that Black Lives Matter is doing. Is that okay if I go now?
I'd like to finish the discussion of voting rights and then we can go to that, Deborah.
Okay, but I want
I did-
everybody to, but
yeah.
I had to add that point when Donna said, our Blacks.
Yeah,
I didn't.
So we're gonna get,
My
If we
intention
could
was
just
not to
continue
be.
on voting rights for a minute. Donna, can I ask you one more follow-up?
Yes.
And I know Pat's got his hand up as well.
I got up
You
there.
talked about the bill that Representative Lewis had brought forth and that it's really just kind of stalled and gone nowhere. Why is that? Is that just because of the overall stalemate of Congress doing anything?
what
If
bill
we-
is that?
The one they've called the
They-
John Lewis Voting Rights Act.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah, and it was meant to restore some of how the Voting Rights Act was gutted and strengthen it.
Right.
I think it's both the ways that Congress is stalled and seems there's no crossing the aisle for anything in this Congress, really, none at all. I mean, there used to be people who would, whoever thought we would look back and think that Bush was so civil or, and McCain could cross the aisle and others could cross the aisle. Ted Kennedy crossed the aisle. There just isn't any of that. But I think too, and this is not going to be comfortable, and I didn't mean my comment about my Black people. I didn't mean that to be pejorative at all. But if I had to choose who I identified with in this country, it would be the ones who are left out. So racism, there's no overstating what a problem racism is in this country. It is a serious problem. And when I started to say that Black people are not okay, I think none of us realize historically, there's a new book out on a Black mental institution in Alabama. But Henrietta Lacks,
Yes.
had a daughter that was in that institution who died 2 years after Henrietta Lacks actually did. But the practices were heinous, and the conditions under which Black people still are designated as mentally ill are unjust and oppressive in themselves. Because what is normal? What is normalcy? Who defines that behavior? So there was a lot historically of just let's put them out of sight. Let's put people that we disagree with, who are problematic, let's put them out of sight. And now that we have all the psychiatric medications, we restrain them with psychiatric medications. Of course, there's the breakup of institutions.
What happened to me?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I meant.
Yeah, I really did. It really did. And then Donna, what's the name of that book?
I will find it for you and send it to the group.
Thank you,
Right.
because that happened to me. Yeah,
That's what I meant when I said, Black people are not okay. And there was a new
Bishop.
Metro West health study that came out in the school about the schools. And we're used to hearing about an achievement gap. But now in many districts, there's also a social emotional learning gap for our Black and Hispanic students, meaning that they just have higher rates of depression, higher rates of feeling like they don't fit in,
And poverty.
and poverty.
and I want to say, that white folks aren't all okay either. Especially you got Donald Trump, a crazy man at the top. And white folks are not okay. And Malcolm X predicted that it's not going to just be a Black thing, it's going to be a Black and a white thing. Now, Bishop, if you want to chime in, you can. If you don't, I'll just keep going because I can go.
Excuse me, Deborah, before you keep going, Pat's got his hand up and let's let him.
And Doug, this is Black History Month, so you got to give me some time to speak or else.
I have, Deborah, but you've been interrupting repeatedly.
Yeah, well, I need to have my voice heard. You can talk about Black people, but you got Black people here that can speak for themselves. We have got to tell our own story.
All right, so Pat's going to defer to you. You have the floor, Deborah. Go for it.
Thank you. I'm not angry. I'm not an angry Black woman or any of that. I asked Donna to do this and she did a remarkable job because I could not do the research. I had a lot going on. I still have a lot going on. I have a shoulder problem today. I don't know, all these aches and pains are just creeping up on me. I was coughing. I was sick for 2 weeks. I asked Bishop to come on and he's laying back like, he don't even know what's going on, but that's okay because I wrote a book. That's where I'm going to start. It's called Nana Said. And I read the origins of it has in it the origins of collard greens. And for some reason, Bishop Kelley, when I told him about it, he chuckled. He had a fit when I told him that my book talked about the origins of collard green. And I never heard him laugh so much. I consider this family, so I'm telling y'all the truth. I wrote a piece about the origins of collard green. Paul, I'm gonna drop by. I'm gonna get you your copy today. I'm gonna give people who have supported me their props, and that has been Paul Carew. When I called Paul Carew, Paul, I need a little bit extra. I got to get this published. Paul was right there. This guy here down the bottom, my uncle Tom. He's been there right from the start. And as well as Martin and Donna. Donna's been checking on me for a long time. Yes, Blacks have it bad. We are upset. I really want to say we are very upset, especially because of Donald Trump. He has 9 felonies and he's still running for president. Do you think a Black man, particularly or President Obama, could have 1 felony and still run for president? Hell to the no. And the reason why Black people, we might not even vote. I told my nephew, Jason, and he's my nephew, I said, Jason, I don't think I'm gonna vote this year. And he rose up, the ancestors rose up in him, and he said, what? Now, this is my nephew, he's 42. He said, our ancestors bled and died. I gotta make it interesting for you guys, because Bishop's falling asleep, so I'm trying to make it interesting, give you a few stories.
I think he actually wanted to say something a few minutes ago.
Let me just finish my
Sure.
part. Now, Pat, Doug and Sarah, Jason said, what? Our ancestors bled and died for us to vote, and you're not gonna vote? But I can't believe I said it out my mouth because I very feel like we have these choices. We have Biden and we have Donald, DT. But the thing about it is, it's just very frustrating. Like Donna said, it's frustrating, right, Donna?
It's very difficult. It's
this guy, right? He caused the insurrection. Get down there to the Capitol and fight for your life. Not only did he cause the insurrection, he also stole documents. Come on. But I read a book. I don't care if I'm pissing off my friends, Tom, because you need to be pissed off at some time because the truth will set you free. Okay?
Yes, the rest of that is, first it will make you miserable.
I'm a Black woman in America in a town of white folks. Okay? But I am loved by these white people, and they allow me to speak my piece. Okay,
Hear
Doug.
your frustration, Donna.
You are not.
Now I'm speaking to the choir. Doug, I'm gonna shut my lips. This man here, Doug and Hannah, Sarah bought a tent for Black Lives Matter out of their own money. They came down and put the tent up. So these people, this is the choir I'm preaching to. But Doug, let me tell you what's going on. We're gonna do we're gonna do the thing about Frederick. Remember that thing?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear about. So what's Nick for Black Lives Matter up to?
Nikki,
Donna, tell us more about that.
Nikki from the Historical Society emailed me. I got a meeting with her Tuesday. She wants us to do it again. What is a slave to the 4th of July? She's putting in money for a grant, and she's going to get the grant funding. She says, Deb, I want you to be part of that. So that's what we're gonna do. Donna, my advisor, she says, Deb, keep it simple. The other thing we're gonna do, Donna, right, is Multicultural Day. We're keeping it simple. And then we have the 20th anniversary of Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Day up in Natick. We do it every year. The 20th anniversary of the breakfast that we do in Natick. It's gonna be the 20th anniversary coming up. So we're gonna help with that. We got Sherelle, our new VP/board member. She fills in for me because you need somebody up there in the black community. She lives right next door. So we're gonna do that. So there's three things. What is a slave to the 4th of July? We're gonna do the Multicultural Day in August. And we're going to do the breakfast in 2025. It's gonna be 20 years. Those are the three things that I'm working on. And plus the other book is called White Fear that my sister is getting everybody to read. I'll send you the link and everybody, my sister's been on here. That's it. I said everything. I'm gonna calm down because I know I can be.
I want to give you one more opportunity. You also,
Oh,
you were
no.
holding up your new book, Nana said, and I believe you said that the proceeds from that book are going for Natick for Black Lives Matter.
Yeah,
Do people have an opportunity to get a signed copy of that book?
yes,
Or
they do. They do.
yeah, how do they do that?
They send a check. We have a post office box. Donna has the key. I have the key. You can mail the check directly to the post office box. And you can make the check out to right now.
Natick for Black Lives Matter. Yeah.
Native for Black Lives Matter. Okay, and you mail it to the post office box. So that will include it'll be $50. You get the book for free. That'll include your dues for the year. Now, conversely, if you don't want to join, you don't want to pay the $50 and get the book, you just want the book, it's $13.99. I'm doing a book signing. I love Dale. I'm a librarian. I love Dale. I came in yesterday with the book. She loved it. This is a labor of love. And she said, I'm gonna put it in local author. You go down to children's department. I'm a local author. And she's gonna have it on display because on February 17th, I'm gonna do the book signing. I can get my books at author cost. I need somebody who wants to donate to me to Papa Bean's children's book, to send me a little bit of money so I can get a whole bunch of these bad boys. And I'm gonna sign them off and we'll put some of that money into Native Black Lives
Can you
Matter.
remind people what the post office box number is?
Yeah, I can give them the address. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Again, if you want the post office box number, I can put it in the chat and you could they can send the checks right there, right, Donna?
Yes.
Yeah. So just put that in the chat, Deborah.
Okay. Do you need me to say anything else? Because I'm tired of talking now, Doug.
No, thank you. I appreciate you.
And I just want to congratulate you on your book. And as we talk about disenfranchisement through the Voting Rights Act, it's significant to be able to commend you on your book and to lift up your voice as a Black woman author. So we congratulate you on your book and
thank you.
Yeah.
Donna, I wanted just to say that I have it's a little piece of Black history in here. This is my real grandmother on the back. Who's going to help me wash these greens? My real grandmother. It's my real mother in the book, and that's my dad. So I have a history of collard greens, and me and the bishop have a prayer line. And when I read him the origins of collard greens, I want to make it it's interesting. This book is good. I got the recipe and everything. Paul, you're gonna get yours. And I'm gonna read it to the kids. And Mass Rehab, I'm part of the Mass Rehab. And Mass Rehab called me and they have a group called the Black Employees. Now he's smiling because he's like happy. Bishop's happy. But now Mass Rehab called me because I'm part of the disability community. And they want me to do a book talk there. I want to do one there too, in employment options. So I got one in Boston too, at the Boston Public Library. So I'm starting my book tour, but I read this to Bishop and he cracked up. I guess he didn't know that there was a origin of collard greens. Yeah. I got a little bit about the food historians and how collard greens were, brought to the country and how they thought it was a slave, but it really wasn't. I have a picture of my cousin who's deceased, and I got a whole story about my mother, Auntie Peggy's house. I mean,
that's beautiful. And I have to confess, I've never eaten collard greens in my life.
oh
So
my God.
I look forward, I mean, I've come from this very bland Irish background where we don't even put spices on our food. So I look forward to learning.
Yeah,
book,
because
and I appreciate your voice. And I just wonder going forward if there are ways that we can think about, I mean, your voice is really important, but how can we think about empowering, disenfranchised voices, especially what can we do? I mean,
we're going to I'm going to speak at the Common Street Spiritual Center. Ian's giving me a platform. I'm going to speak at the church at the Open Circle on February 25th. And he said I can bring my books and sell them there. And I'm trying to convince Jason that we can have a potluck soul food dinner. He's going to make the greens. You guys are going to get some fried chicken, some macaroni and cheese. It's going to be potluck soul food. And you can pay for your meal, but he makes the best collard greens. So I'm going to tie that in so we could fatten you up a little bit and get your little soul food in you.
Will that be on the same date, Deborah, the 25th?
Well, I can ask Jason if he can do it on that day. But yeah, that he can make the greens. He does it all. He's a caterer. He does all that stuff. You can have it with neck bones, or if you don't want it with the neck bones, we can have it with the bacon. You can have turkey in it. If you don't want it, we could just have it bland. But he makes the best macaroni. He makes the greens. He's a pickup from the nearest being collard green. I can get some jag from one of my cousins. You guys know what jag is? Don't know what jag is, do you?
Nope.
No, I know your mouth was watering, but it's black-eyed peas and rice. Bishop, do you know what jag is? Bishop's cracking up. I don't know what's wrong with Bishop this morning. Bishop, do you know what jag is?
Yeah, let's let Bishop come off mute. You
Come
want to
on,
wait in
Jag.
here?
Come
You've
on,
been
Bishop.
invoked many times, Bishop.
Go ahead now, Bishop. Go ahead, take off mute.
He's laughing
He's
too
been
hard to
cracking up.
take
Ever
himself
since I
off
wrote
mute.
this book, he can't stop laughing. You're on mute, Bishop. You gotta get off mute.
There you go.
Let me just say this. This is a very compassionate and passionate meeting, and I'll tell you this: that it's easy to offend, and it's also courageous for anybody to show up and also endure offense. Okay, but let me just say this: that I experience this all the time in public speaking. Some people love it and some people don't. And sometimes I get approached after my messages and get called on the red carpet for it. And I apologize. Okay, I apologize. Some people say, well, you don't need to apologize.
I'm sorry.
And I say to them, you know what? I can apologize, but it doesn't mean that my message is going to change. Because it's important that we understand the plight and I would say the issues and problems that other people face, because we're all human beings and we inhabit the same planet. And if you're not okay, I'm not okay. Does that make any sense?
It
Yes.
does. It does.
Yes.
I really like the way you started that off. Passionate and compassionate. I like to think that that's
So
what
this, you know, I really, you know, and when we also make comments about, and Deborah, you know, she uses me as a kicking stool or whatever you want to call it, but you know, you have to be strong enough in order to, I say, take it and tolerate, you know, but we have to move out of our comfort zone, and I applaud you all for moving out of your comfort zone to even talk about this topic. And I know there's a lot of guilt behind it, but we share this guilt. We all share the guilt. Okay. And all of you know that there is discrimination even within our families, regardless of color, regardless. But we have to face it. We have to face it in order to improve ourselves and improve our livelihood. We have to do that. And so Deborah refers to me as the person that cracks up when she brings up stuff. You have to have some humor. If you don't have the humor, you're not going to be able to endure or even move to a better place based on the information that we get. But I would say this, and I think I've said enough about that, is that if we look at the facts, so we look at the facts. By the way, Deborah, she's an advocate, and we need somebody that's going to advocate for us. We need somebody that's going to, as I said, bring us to a place of discomfort so that we can, because sometimes what happens is that we're creatures of habit, even with the food stuff. The greens, the reason why I laugh so much about the greens is because it was interesting to me that anybody would do any research on greens. I grew up eating greens, and I know it's healthy for you. But again, the same thing even with food. Too much protein is not good for us. Deborah talks about fattening people up. Well, there's a reason why you fatten people up, but the thing is what's going to be most healthy for us is moderation and countering a lot of the stuff that we do excessively. And so I'm a health advocate. And I know that the high protein that we ate back during slavery was necessary for us to even, be able to function under the heat and under the oppression and all that kind of stuff. If we didn't have the high protein, we wouldn't have survived. So anyway, now we're not under that kind of oppression, but a different kind of mental oppression and dysfunctionality. So anyway, getting back to this is all a learning process for us, and the fact that there were all these amendments. I mean, starting from the 1868 when they granted Black citizenship. It wasn't until 2 years later that the 15th Amendment was passed, and still, even up to 2013 was still amending because of people trying to diminish the rights of others, all kinds of things, and the things that I highlighted in all this discussion was. And bring, just so that everybody can ponder over this, is there's different ways that people are discriminated against. Language, there's people that, and they're prohibited from voting rights. Language, immigration, incarceration, even the elderly vote, accessibility, handicap, you name it. It seems like there's always human nature always comes up with a way to discriminate, seemingly. And so we have to be vigilant, all of us. Mm-hmm. We have to be vigilant to always look at our laws and our regulations and see if it is those things are uniform and equal for all of us. Otherwise, again, we're not going to live a better life. We're going to always be fighting. We'll always, I'll tell you right now personally, and then I'll stop. I had some misgivings about coming on today because, it is painful to continue to talk and discuss these things, but I know I have to do that. That's my conviction. So I appreciate all of you all for being on, and I appreciate also for being maybe a few of the Blacks that's on this this meeting today. I applaud Natick. I applaud you guys, and continue to come up, show up. The hardest thing to do is show up, and certainly to engage with somebody like Deborah. but look, she's a good person. She's a good-hearted person. Please don't hold anything against her. Continue to tolerate. Continue to, engage. And that's all I want to say. And I want to say, God bless all of you. Thank you for giving me this time to talk.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
Go ahead, Don.
I just want to say that I appreciated the opportunity to look into the Voting Rights Act. And I certainly learned a lot more that I didn't share with you because I didn't want to take off on some kind of academic lecture. But I'm convinced that we need to find ways to empower people, especially in this divisive election cycle. I love Pat's suggestion of let's find our community organizations to make sure people have rights to polls. Let's help people realize that, it might not seem like their vote matters, but it does. So especially now, and people don't feel like they can make a difference, and we need to reclaim that even in ourselves, because we reach a point where we think, oh, we don't make a difference, but we can. So let's do it, and going forward, let's think of ways that we can stop the disenfranchisement, especially of the Black community, and even as a town, be more welcoming to the Black community in our midst.
Thank you very much. Oh, go ahead, Deborah.
I'm sorry that I was so raw today. And I tried so hard. That's why I asked Donna to do the presentation. I thought she would be much better at it than me, but I got a little anxious and I overstepped my bounds.
Honestly, I don't know how you get through things, and I just felt like I was going to need to be medicated if I read too many more of these law articles and journal articles, because there's just so much work to do. But I know we can't give up hope. We just have to keep showing up. So thank you also.
And Donna, we wish you well at your run for school committee. I think you would be a great member of the school committee. I hope that you win this time again.
Well, I'm not doing this for that. But I just hope that people's voices, we have a very productive conversation. Our kids are our future, so we all need to show up for these elections and vote our conscience, and that's important. So
I want to thank Donna and Bishop and Deborah and everybody that spoke. But as we've alluded to, it's difficult to put ourselves out there. Both Brindley and
we have a couple
Bishop,
people with their hands up.
Yeah, I got that, Martin. I want to go to them. And Martin, I know you wanted to point out some aspects of our town election that we can use the rest of our time for today. But Brindley, why don't you go first?
Hi, guys. Deborah, always great to see you. I thank you, Bishop, for that wonderful thoughts that they're really poignant. I wanted to actually talk about your book. I'm excited to get it because I am a huge Collards fan. I grew up in the South, and I still, to this day, even though I haven't lived in the South for 25 years now, I still, every New Year's Day, without fail, cook black-eyed peas and collard greens and serve them to my family. And it is my boys, all three of them, it's their favorite meal of the year. They gobble it up. They think it's fantastic. And I think collards are amazing. I stopped cooking them. My grandmother and my great-grandmother taught me to cook them with ham hock, but I stopped as soon as I was on my own. I stopped doing that. I use seaweed, which serves the same chemistry purpose as the ham hock. And I would love it if you wanted to write a follow-up book for the history, because we called our black-eyed peas Hoppin' John. And I have always wondered if that's a good name for it or a bad name for it, or what the history is for calling it that. I don't refer to it that way, but when I go home to North Carolina, everybody does. I just call it black-eyed peas and collard greens, but I was raised to believe that that's the health and wealth of New Year. The black-eyed peas were the wealth, and the collard greens were the health. And I'm happy to help cook anybody collard greens, because they're amazing. And I love that you did this book, Deborah. I think it's great.
All right.
And I think that I'm writing the sequel. Nina said too. I'm writing another book because I never heard Bishop laugh so much that he could not stop laughing when I talked to him about I mean, that was a good, and we need the laughter. We need to laugh, right? Sometimes
Yes, we
we
do.
get so serious, and I think that I like to bring the joy. I've been watching In the Heat of the Night. I have to tell you, In the Heat of the Night, that's the one with Sidney Poitier. But they have like a series of them. So the detective and I don't know why I was watching them so much, but it's in Mississippi. That my grandmother hailed from Mississippi. But it's a good show. I just sit there and I watch it, and it's Carol O'Connor. He came a long way because he was Archie Bunker.
Right.
But now he's in the Heat of the Night, and he fell for a black woman in the show, and so it's a very interesting. But there's a lot of black and white issues. You know how the blacks are in the bottom, and there's a lot of that in the show. But I got a new TV, so I got it from Advocates. Advocates has a fund called the We Fund. If you apply for it, I have so much information. I saw a lot, but I like to hear the night.
Deb, do you have any more information on us on how other activities or events or ways that we might celebrate this month? I mean, we really need to be mindful of Black history all the time, but this is Black history.
I'm glad you brought that up because Nikki emailed me about Greer, who is the historian. What's her name? Brenna Greer. She's
right, from Wellesley College, yeah.
Yep, she's doing a talk on who framed Rosa Parks.
Oh.
And there's also a virtual at the Bacon Free Library on February 8th. I just found out Fannie Lou Hamer, who was like, I'm sick and tired of being, so there's a virtual talk on that. Doug, if you want me to, I could put all that in the
chat. Sure,
chat.
yeah, if you would.
That'd be good.
I'm walking Black history because my aunt was Mildred C. Haley. She's one of the people that was honored at that the statue, the half statue. They got nobody knows there's Martin and credit of the bronze one down there that a lot of people complaining that why can't we get the whole faces and stuff? We just got the embrace.
Right.
My aunt was one of the civil rights leaders that was Mildred C. Haley. She was one of the ones honored. She's the one who told me to make sure my house clean because you don't want the housing people to come get you.
Is Haley House named after your aunt?
Yeah, the whole project down there is named the Mildred C. Haley Apartments, and named it all after her.
But there's a wonderful restaurant and cooperative in Roxbury called Haley House. Is that also connected to your aunt?
I don't know, but there's a place called the Julia Martin House down in Julia Martin was 94. She just passed. She got a couple of citations for that. So there's a lot of history, and I write about it in all my books. So when you get the book, you're going to get all the history of the family in here. And it's Black history, and it's local Black history, because all my family, they all did something important. And I have my African-American Saturday school. I write around, my aunt said, start an African-American Saturday school. So I went to Roach Brothers, and also February 11th, I'll be at Roach Brothers out there with the books. You can get them from there. And the lady, they said, I brought them a book. Where's mine? I said, you guys, they asked me to bring them a free, can we get a free book? I gave them a book. because I go down there and I sell my books. And so the other lady, I gave one to Andrew. Andrew's a chef over there. And I gave one to him and the lady in the booth. Where's my book? I said, gee, I gotta give you guys all these books. But I don't mind because they're really nice to me.
Yeah.
My mother, when she was alive, she thought they were kind of expensive and kind of snooty. She thought the Roche brothers were kind of snooty because they wear those chef, they look like chefs when they wear those black things. I had a job there and then I had to run across the street and put on my Walgreens shirt. I worked at both places. Welcome to Walgreens. And I run back to Roche Brothers and put on the whole black thing. And I was a cashier at Roche Brothers.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't, I said, I can't do that. I took my thing off. I quit.
Well, this seems like it's fairly stream of consciousness, but there's something kind of delightful to go from the Voting Rights Act to experience the empowerment of Deb as a Black woman, as she's published a new book, and to hear about that. And laughter is important because God help us if we don't laugh. And so Deb, thank you for that. And thank you for asking me to do this. I was like kicking and screaming this morning saying, I can't think of anything I'd rather do than less. And I really have enjoyed reflecting with all of you. And I'm open to thinking about ways of increasing or empowering people with voting in the community. So if you got any thoughts, let's think together.
Thank you very much for that, Donna. Pat and Polly have both been patient with their hands up, but I do want to give them a chance to speak. Pat?
Well, I was just going to quickly say, I assume most of you must have gotten your in the mail. It gives you the option to vote by mail.
What is that? Let me see.
The vote by mail thing came to us. It's backwards here, I'm showing you, but you can sign up. And I mean, I know like a lot of people like to go and vote in person, which is good too. But it'd be good if we could get people out, and maybe for another session down the road, Doug and Martin. I was curious about the nationwide, movement to help people register, and I remember Stacey Abrams was fairly successful in Georgia with her project. And I was wondering if anything is happening along those lines to really empower and encourage minority people, Blacks, Hispanics, etc., to get registered and get to vote.
Well, Kristen Pope has wrote to the it's called Natick for Color group. Families of Color in Natick.
Oh.
He's wrote a letter to them or trying to get them interested in running for the town meetings. I go to town meeting. I don't see any other people of color there. Mostly it's just me. But
we have a desperate situation with town meeting because we don't have even enough people to run for town meeting in many precincts, and the deadline to run for town meeting is tomorrow. You only need 10 signatures, and that's pretty easy to do. So if you have any, I mean, our town needs you, so go and get the papers from the town clerk and run for town meeting. I mean, we don't even have contested races, and it's not good.
Yeah, there are certain precincts.
What'd you say?
I was saying there's certain precincts, particularly, of course, the precinct 1, which we always talk about, but others as well, not to that extent, that habitually just don't have enough representation. And anybody from precinct 1 or 2 and a couple others really are really needed, I think, to fill in.
Yeah, I want to give Polly a chance to chime in. He's had his hand up. And
yeah, good morning. I want to thank Deb and Donna. For those who don't know, I am the town liaison to the group, so Donna usually mentions that, not Donna, Deb, but I am the town liaison. One of the things I love most about this group is, Donna and Deb did a great job, but Donna starting things off on the rights to vote and so forth, and I think it was great. I think there's a few areas we could have expanded upon. One of my favorite parts of coming into these meetings on Monday mornings is engagement. I'm not one not to engage, so yeah, Doug and Sarah will tell you I got a maybe they're not a big mouth, but I like to be engaging. But they took the ball by the horns and they ran with the topics this morning and did a great job on it. And I would have liked to bring up a few other things, the new Jim Crow and other things that I've read that book 4 or 5 times. And the bishop wasn't laughing. The bishop wasn't falling asleep. He's like me. Bishop likes to engage. Me and him have talked for an hour and a half in the common together. You know, so he's like me. He's engaging. So he stopped raising his hand early on, right, Bishop? But I think a great job, Sarah. Great job, Donna, and Deb, on a job well done. Good to see you,
Thanks,
Bishop.
Paul. Thanks, Polly. Sarah, you wanted to say something?
Yeah,
as well, right?
as I've been listening to the last couple minutes of discussion, I'm thinking about the intersection of, having people have more information. How do you vote? Where do you vote? Just real basic stuff. And I'm thinking about Multicultural Day, which unfortunately that tends to happen at a time when we are typically away. And I have to say I've missed it, which I've been sorry about. But I'm wondering if in the mix of what gets presented on or put together on Multicultural Day, some kind of a display or something about voting. How do you register to vote? Where do you register? Where would you vote? When do you vote? Just some real basic stuff that, an event like Multicultural Day may attract a higher percentage of, non-white majority folks, and maybe it would be a fairly simple way to reach at least some piece of that community and help draw them into the process. Just a thought.
It's a good suggestion. Cindy,
Right.
you wanted to say something? You got to come off mute. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, just to follow on that I can see why when you're 1 in 300 million people or 200 million voters, I don't know how many voters there are in our population, but it's pretty easy to think that your one vote doesn't make a difference. But in a town, your vote makes a much bigger difference. And really, when you come to, the things that affect our daily lives in many respects are because of our town government and our state government. So being able to vote and I think young people especially, and the media makes it such a big deal about the presidential election. And it's really important that people who are local, who come to those events become aware of the power that they have as voters on those smaller elections.
Well said.
Yeah.
I'm just reminded about how Black people weren't, even though we were allowed to vote back in the day, which I guess in 1872, they put the poll tax on us, and then a lot of people, I was just watching, I talked about In the Heat of the Night, and people were like, they'd go to vote, and they wouldn't even let them in the house, in the place to vote. It was just terrible. I mean, we couldn't vote, as Blacks. And I'm sure women and other people faced it, but it's just a real hard thing when you look back and you think about how,
And Deb, you're right, it
Yeah.
still happens too, because they decrease the number of polling locations in some districts, which makes it harder for Black people and working people to vote. And they come up with just egregious policies, like you can't drink water. Remember that? Like, where there's a big to-do and you couldn't have water in line while you were waiting to vote, and it was like so hot. I mean, they're always trying to disenfranchise people in their voices. So reflecting on this is important.
Very much so.
Yeah, and we have it comparatively, it's good here that, we have, multiple voting places within one town, but some places there's like 1, 2 in a whole county or something.
That's right.
We can get into an air-conditioned building even if we have to wait in line for a few minutes. Some of the conditions, like you said, Donna, in other parts of the country, what they make people go through. And honestly, I have to give those people that wait 6 hours in the blazing sun to vote. I don't know if I could
Wow.
stick that out myself.
And yeah, and then the fact that with the big lie with Donald Trump, I'm not trying to be political, but the towns in the counties or states that he tried to say was voting fraud were all black, right, Donna? They were black towns.
I don't think that's a coincidence, Deborah.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think the tendency is gonna be to divide and conquer all of us. Everybody's gonna be trying to divide us as a society, and even if we disagree with people, I think we have to work really hard to have civil conversations and, you know, respect each other and bring out people's voices, and it's gonna be really hellacious in the coming
So,
months.
yeah, to that point, Donna, I want to turn us locally just for a second, to our upcoming spring election. And our efforts, unfortunately, are a little bit unsuccessful. So starting next week, we start all of our sessions to make space for candidates for local town offices. There's only one race that's contested, the one that Donna's in for school committee. We've got 4 folks running for 2 slots. We've got 3 of the candidates confirmed to come, including Donna. The one candidate, unfortunately, I have not been able to get a confirmation from is James Roberts, who some of you may know is running for the parental rights platform.
He sent an email just yesterday that he is not gonna be able to come.
That's what I just said, Martin.
No, you didn't actually.
Oh, well,
You
I
said
guess,
you said you hadn't gotten confirmation.
okay. I'm not doing
Sorry.
well this morning.
Sorry.
I have confirmation that James Roberts will not be speaking to us. I'm hoping that the reason for that is as he stated, which was just that he's too busy on Mondays, and not that he has thought that our group would not be receptive to him. Because to Donna's point, I think we really try to be receptive to all viewpoints here, even if we know ahead of time that the majority of us might not agree with those. But that being the case, we will be having sessions for each of the 3 school committee candidates. We'll be having a session for the select board candidate, which is not a contested race. Next week, we had reserved space for any of the people running for, I think there were 5 other positions, all non-contested. Only one of them, Martin, I've forgotten the fellow's name, has said that he would like to speak to us, but I don't know that we have a confirmation for it. But in any event, next week's session will be a mixed session. We'll hopefully get one or more of those candidates, and Pat will also be speaking to us, not election related, but we're fortunate, or he is fortunate, the Keep Natick Beautiful group is fortunate to have Helen Aguirre running on a charity bib in the marathon again this year. And the benefit of her running will be Keep Natick Beautiful. So we'll hear more about that effort next week as well. That's all I've got. I want to appreciate everybody who spoke today. I want to apologize for me not being able to kind of keep the conversation smooth, but I think it's just a testament to folks' passion. I like what Bishop said, passion and compassion. I think we try to practice.
That was nice, very good.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect.
So,
Doug, just quick comment. Doug, I think you did an excellent job managing this volatile kind of a meeting. So I commend you on that. I just wanted to raise, again, a couple of things, actually, that maybe was not mentioned. The immigrant situation. That's something that we need to really be very conscious of. And I'm sure you all are up to speed in terms of all the news that's coming out on that, and Ukraine and the Middle East with the Palestinians and the Jews. But I think what may get missed sometimes is the plight of the African American immigrants. And that only shows mainly because of the disparity and the dire need for shelter and food. But the thing that I wanted to point out is that yes, civic engagement and social activism is necessary. However, when things seem to get out of control, the foundation comes back on our faith. The support comes back on our faith and the church. And the government local government has turned to the church to help with the immigrant problem. So I need you all support and prayers to hold up. We're even opening up, our pastors are opening up their doors and inviting immigrants into their home because of homelessness. So I wanted to raise that. I also want to raise the point that yes, I really, for folks our age, for us to be involved and engaged, I think that's powerful because we can share a lot about our experience, but I think we need to, Deborah, bring in more young people into the conversation. Let's bring more young people into the conversation. Let's hear what they're seeing, what they're feeling, and that sort of thing. I think if we bring them in, I think that would also help us collectively to address all of the concerns and issues that we're trying to grapple with right now. Thank you. My blessings to all of you.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you. Anybody else have any closing comments or thoughts? Otherwise, we can wrap up.
No, I just want to thank you guys for having us, Natick for Black Lives Matter. And thank you again, Donna, for your talk. And I hope that we could, I was just thinking that, maybe we're not going to do Zoom like we used to. We used to do a lot of Zoom meeting. We have it all on YouTube. Martin helped me put it up there. But we can also just come here and present, bring guest speakers. And hopefully that would add to the conversations on race and different things, aspects. Because we're all in this together. Like Martin Luther King said, we're all in this together. I'm just paraphrasing. I know he didn't say we're all in this together like I just said it, but in his eloquent way, that's what he was saying. Thanks. God bless you all.
Yeah. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Deborah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Deborah, Bishop, and Donna. Really wonderful today. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Always good to see you, Elaine.
Yep.
Thanks.
Take care, all.